Luke. Betray your customers, you must. Insult audience, yes. This is the way of the woke.
Around? You found out. You did.
What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. So sometimes a meme just says it best, especially in profound and sad moments. This is a favorite of mine from the iconic 1970s trilogy, The Godfather. Look how they massacred my boy. Look how they massacred my boy. The Godfather staring at his dead son, who had been riddled with bullets in an attack from a different mob. And what does it say? Well, it says that you had better protect the things that are yours, the things that you hold dear, and you better make sure that they don't get destroyed, right? And this meme is often used, ladies and gentlemen, in the modern era, especially when we talk about entertainment. Somebody else who filmed a pretty epic trilogy starting in the 1970s was George Lucas. I think you could possibly argue that his trilogy was even more powerful and had even longer lasting cultural ramifications than The Godfather. George Lucas here on the set of the world that he physically and literally created. You can see in these old photos just how much the guy loved what he was doing, how much he loved working with these classically trained actors who had been hired to do this space opera and this hero's journey that lasted, through the ages and was the most successful sci-fi series, most successful trilogy Hollywood's ever produced, actually. And by the numbers, really hard to argue. It's not saying that George Lucas is perfect. George Lucas did also create the Star Wars Holiday Special, and the Star Wars Holiday Special, up until recently, had the lowest audience score in history for a standalone Star Wars product. But that, of course, was surpassed just moments ago by the Acolyte, of course. You can see here that the Acolyte has dug much deeper into the dumpster fire, that is Star Wars, and has returned a 14% audience score in a total and complete devastation to the Star Wars brand, proving that there just are no more fans left anywhere, including toxic ones. And also a bit of a validation to George Lucas and what some considered his worst product ever produced. George, ladies and gentlemen, did have sadder times, like this photo of George Lucas signing over his IP to Bob Iger at Disney. This is a real photo. This is not a meme. This is really what George Lucas looked like. Does this look like a happy man? This looks like a man who is thriving and who's living out his dream. This looks like a man whose dream has died. Look at the dead eyes. Look at the defeat in George Lucas's eyes as he signs over his life's work to this man. Of course, memes were made of this image. And George Lucas went ahead and called Disney white slavers.
You have to put it behind you, and it's a very, very, very hard thing to do. But you have to just cut it off and say, okay, end the ball game. I got to move on. And everything in your body says, don't, you can't. And these are my kids. So
all those Star Wars films.
All the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are. I loved them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
and
sell
you
them
sold
off.
them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and.
Okay, but having said all that, and having talked to you for the last, and known you for a while, and admired you, I mean, it must hurt you.
Well,
it's your family. It's the last story. It's your story.
But
it's
in the end,
you.
But I knew there's 3 more stories. And I knew that was going to probably take, to do it right would take about 10 years. And I said, I'm 70. I don't know whether I'll be here when I'm 80. Every 10 years the odds get less. And so I said, and I'm not ready to do that because I want to do these other things. So I have to make the decision on my own that it's time for me to move on.
Yet George Lucas had been a good little boy up until recently, talking about Star Wars, giving Kathleen Kennedy plenty of runway to create her own vision for Star Wars. But now the gloves are proverbially off. George Lucas is seeing what Star Wars is becoming with every passing product that is released into the product sludge pipeline. They get further and further destroyed by whatever fans are left. Except you completely turned this show and the entire Star Wars franchise into a dumpster fire. It really is the worst. The power of cringe. Disney's woke addiction destroyed the whole franchise. The power of a destroyed franchise. The power of money. So glad you decided not to drop this all at once, like they did with Echo. We get another 5 weeks of laughter, waiting for them to turn off the comments. Yeah. The power of woke. Incredible. The power of money. Walt Disney stock. Tanking. So, yeah, things aren't going great in Disneyland and Hollywood land. In fact, the Magic Kingdom has come crumbling down. And along with it has been the sort of muzzle that George Lucas has had on talking about Star Wars and the state of Hollywood. He has very much stayed away from the drama and the culture war stuff. But now George Lucas's gloves are proverbially off. He's an old man now. He's not going to be making any more movies. He's not going to be making any more money. And so in recent interviews, George Lucas has been saying, this is all terror. This is what's going on in Hollywood is they're massacring my boy. Look how they massacred my boy. And I quote, what happens now happens in streaming, probably more than features, but features is all the same thing. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. It's not just movies, but almost everything. There's no original thinking.
What will cinema become in 10 years?
Same thing as it is now. There's one thing that's really, what happens now, and it happens in streaming probably more than features, but features the same thing. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. There's no, and it's not just in movies, but in almost everything. There's no original thinking. You know, it's like people just, I saw something, let's do something like that.
Yeah.
And it's also the way the movies are sold. If you go in and say, I've got something that you've never seen before, that and you don't understand it, it's very hard to get a deal. I mean, you can do it, but it's like the big studios, I mean, they don't want that. They want something that is like something they've seen.
It's
because they don't have an imagination to come up with, to see something that isn't there. I mean, I got Star Wars done mainly because at the same time I was writing the script, I hired an artist to draw pictures of what I was doing because I knew I couldn't describe what it was. It was impossible. But when you see the pictures, you say, oh, I get it. And that was really what made the movie, what sold it.
It's leading to headlines like this, George Lucas savaging modern Hollywood, saying that they're just remaking his stuff, which they did. You know, Disney just soft rebooted New Hope with their Daisy Ridley Rey saga, right? And then they just gender swapped Luke. They even used the old characters. And Chewbacca's in every scene. George Lucas is right here. I think there's some things that George Lucas is very not right on, but he's very right here. And he's also very right to savagely hit back at the critics who are coming for his original trilogy because it's not suitable for modern audiences.
The message.
So also from the Cannes Film Festival, George Lucas popping off on people saying that Star Wars is too white.
I was as surprised as anybody in the first one and the first three that everybody from 5 years old to 85 years old liked it all over the world, everywhere. And that was, you know, I said, wow. Because there are certain aspects of that movie which say, you know, they would say, well, there's no, it's not, it's all white men. I said, it's not. Most of the people there are aliens. And the idea is that you're supposed to accept people for what they are, even if they're big and furry, or whether they've got a green, they're green and whatever. The idea is all of the people are equal. The only people that aren't, which was in there, are the robots. Well, you can't come in here. We don't like your kind here. So they were the only ones that were discriminated against, and that was a way of saying, you know, people always discriminate against something, and sooner or later, that's what's going to happen. And we're already starting it with AI, saying, well, we can't trust those robots.
So what about women? There aren't enough women in Star Wars. Remember, the Force is female, says Kathleen Kennedy.
Later on, when they were making more movies, they said, there's no women in the movies. I said, who do you think the heroes are in those films? What do you think Princess Leia was? She is the head of the rebellion. She's the one that's taking this young kid that doesn't know anything and this boisterous, I know everything guy who can't do anything and trying to save the rebellion with these clowns. I said, she's the hero of the movie. And it's the same thing with Queen Amidala. Even though she has Jedi on her side, she was still the hero prime mover. And they said, well, but there's no women, you know. I said, you can't just put a woman in pants and expect her to be a hero. You know, they can wear dresses, they can wear whatever they want. It's their brains and their ability to think and do and plan and be logistical, and you know, that's what the hero is. You know, yes, all the women, they couldn't do lightsabers, but they could shoot guns and they could, you know. And we also did a thing where we didn't really we killed robots, stormtroopers, aliens, but we very rarely killed humans. You know, that was kind of an idea that goes through the movie, but everybody thinks of it as a movie where you kill everybody, but we don't.
And so let's attack George Lucas a little bit more and say there's actually no black people in the movies, because, of course, we need to tick every single box in this fantasy saga about space set thousands, millions of years ago. Got it? Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? Yes. Because that galaxy needs to reflect the LA that you live in today. That's right. George Lucas on if there's not enough black people in Star Wars.
The other part of that was they said, well, when they, you know, the critics kept saying, well, there's no, what we mean is there's no black people in the movie. Well, in the first one, there were a few Tunisians who were dark, but in the second one, I had, you know, Billy D. Williams, and in the third one, and in the new ones, which they were also criticizing, you know, I had Sam Jackson. He was like a, you know, he wasn't a scoundrel like, yeah, like
Lando.
But he was one of the top Jedi. He was like and he wanted to be in it so bad that all he really wanted was a purple sword. And so I said, great. No, but we paid him a regular salary, but the secret to Sam, who's a fantastic actor and has been in a gazillion movies, his agent said, don't tell him that, you know, we could get a big thing out of it. I said, look, it's a small part. It's the best I can do. I may be able to extend it to the other two movies because could be a key character. And but he did it for very little. But I gave him a percentage, but it wasn't net. It wasn't gross, it was net. And for us, because I was financing them myself, net and gross were the same thing. So we did that, but the other part of it was they said...
My final shot here across the bow is George Lucas to Disney and saying, you know what? I think they've destroyed Star Wars. It's pretty remarkable. It's a subtext. You have to listen to his tonality here. But you can tell that this is what he's saying.
when I sold the company, I just sort of said, because I had a baby girl, I got married, I had a different life, and I said, I'm gonna, you know, and I didn't, because I knew it would take me another 10 years to make those films. And I said, and I was 69, and I said, I'm not gonna be doing this when I'm 79. And I won't, you know, it's time to let go and let somebody else do it. Even though, like with Empire Strikes Back and some, I ended up having to be on the set the whole time, but it's like, I was the only one that really knew what Star Wars was, and Gersh and I were really good friends, so it was like, you know, and so I was like the consultant, the advisor who actually knew the world, because there's a lot to it. The Force, nobody understood the Force. Nobody, you know, what they do is, and then they started other ones when I sold the company, and they, you know, a lot of those ideas that were in there sort of got lost. But that's the way it is. If you give it up, you give it up.
I want to talk about you.
So I guess the lesson here is, if you want your kids to be raised right, then you better homeschool, right? Otherwise, you'll see how they massacred your boy. And do not let these woke people near your children. You know what I mean? Right? George Lucas is learning this the hard way. 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yikes. Like, share, and subscribe. It's your boy Benny. See ya.